Urgent, a frontline clash that drove the enemy mad. The Ukrainian armed forces are launching a cross-strike against the Russian army in Kupyansk. Putin's grand failure. The Novopavlivka landing force has gone under. The first details. Near Pokrovsk, Russian soldiers are engaging in mass self-destruction while Ukrainian forces have performed flawlessly. This has happened for the first time. A kamikaze ground drone struck. This left enemy generals with their jaws dropped. Our forces are igniting the fire of vengeance for the occupiers in the heart of the front line. Stay tuned for more details until the end. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Darina Hutsakalo bringing you the latest events. The situation in Kupyansk is escalating. The Russian army is gradually losing control over the city in Kharkiv region, and the Ukrainian defense forces have made a decisive statement highlighting a turning point on the front line.
There is a trend showing that the Russians are gradually losing ground. They are losing control over the city and over the areas where they used to be. These are the northern districts, where they entered and tried to gain a foothold, but their numbers have decreased there as a result of effective counteractions. For now, it can't be called a victory yet. At this stage, it's still a work in progress.
Meanwhile, the Russians are loudly proclaiming what they call a so-called Potemkin capture.
Russian troops in Kupyansk have been ordered to simulate control over the city by waving Russian flags in areas where their small groups are present. The occupiers have started including flags in supply packages for their troops, which are dropped into the city using drones. At least one such operation has already taken place.
However, this clumsy order ended up working against the occupiers themselves. It became much easier for Ukrainian forces to target them. As a result, the armed forces of Ukraine were able to thwart all the enemy's plans and strike back hard. Another triumph for the armed forces of Ukraine on a hot front line. Ukraine's defense forces crushed a Russian landing party near Novopavlivka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. 15 of Putin's soldiers were sent to meet Kobzon at once.
All enemy groups have been dealt with. Some are in captivity, others are eliminated. The 59th Brigade lent a helping hand. The reinforcements arrived just in time.
Moreover, the Russians are losing positions in Donetsk as well. Ukraine's defense forces pushed the enemy back near Shakov. Ukrainian land is being systematically liberated from enemy hands. What's more, Putin's own soldiers are helping with this process. A new tactic near Pokrovsk. Drone operators are striking their own troops.
Most often, the ones hit are assault troops using infiltration tactics. Due to the lack of identification marks and general chaos, drone operators often mistake them for the enemy and open fire. According to
partisan reports, losses from such friendly fire are already in the dozens. The reasons for the chaos at the front are becoming obvious. The command is rushing the units to capture Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad by the end of November. Losses are enormous, and instead of the fallen, untrained reinforcements have arrived.
Against this backdrop, open confrontation is growing between assault troops and UAV operators. Shootouts are being recorded, and the assault troops are increasingly accusing the drone operators of allegedly working for the Ukrainians. Another
major failure for Putin's army. The Ukrainian armed forces have destroyed a key defensive line of the Russian army. Putin's troops have been left without protection, and the bewildered generals are powerless to act. Entire companies are fleeing the battlefield while the dictator fantasizes about imaginary victories. At this moment, drones in the sky are literally tearing apart enemy shelters, turning the aggressors' forces to ashes in a matter of minutes. Learn more about our successes. Don't miss what's next.
Pokrovsk is on the brink. It seems that soon the Ukrainian armed forces may have to retreat and abandon the ruined city. Such grim forecasts are being made more and more often by Western military analysts. The command of the Ukrainian armed forces also acknowledges the full complexity of the situation on this section of the front. However, for now there is no talk of surrendering the city. Our soldiers continue to methodically drive out the occupiers who have entrenched themselves in residential buildings. There, the enemy is trying to set up strong points.
The situation in the city itself is difficult. There are ongoing back and forth battles, and accordingly, we are defending both individual houses and separate streets. The enemy in certain situations, especially special forces, penetrate into separate areas, set up ambushes, and accordingly, try to adjust fire. Both drones and artillery are targeting our positions. But now we have already mastered the enemy's tactics in the city. So, accordingly, we are localizing all these points.
The fighting inside the city is for every block, every building, and even individual entrances. Neither side has full control over Pokrovsk. However, the Russian army, despite its losses, is desperately trying to storm the Ukrainian city.
They try to enter from the north repeatedly. We've held our positions there. They also strike from the flanks, and they're trying to activate several directions from the south with both sabotage groups and even armored vehicles. We have carried out counter-terrorist operations against the groups, and as for the equipment, we struck it with firepower.
The losses of the occupiers near Pokrovsk are so great that Russian contract soldiers are massively refusing to take part in these meat grinder assaults and are simply fleeing their positions. The Russians no longer retrieve their wounded and dead from the streets, and their evacuation teams are now being reassigned to assault units. This state of affairs does nothing to boost the occupiers' morale. According to our partisans, the latter are going AWOL in almost entire groups, destroying their own equipment in advance.
Agents are reporting the disappearance or desertion of several of their comrades.
After a series of precise strikes by the Ukrainian defense forces on the positions of Russian troops on the outskirts of Pokrovsk, command posts, parking areas, equipment and UAV units were hit. Some Russian servicemen link the desertion of Russian soldiers and the strikes on the positions of the Russian armed forces to each other. Some believe that these servicemen were directly involved in this. Those few desperate ones who foolishly decided to stay at the positions near Pokrovsk face a hungry and painful death. And all because the defense forces have completely cut off the main logistics route. No more supplies or ammunition are being delivered to the occupiers. At least 2 airstrikes were carried out on the road that the Russians had managed to use to bring light vehicles into the city. After that, the enemy was left without a supply route. Now the occupiers can only reach their positions on foot. And thanks to the intense fire from the Ukrainian armed forces, only a handful managed to do so. Recently, Russian soldiers have started resorting to any trick they can think of just to avoid being spotted by Ukrainian drones. One of the Kremlin's latest no-analogs inventions is these kinds of makeshift armors. Our defenders have nicknamed them tin cans. They don't make the occupiers any less visible, but they do get opened up by FPV drones just like canned food. No matter where the occupier tries to hide, our drone operators flush them out even from there. A vivid example of this is right now on your screens. The concrete pipe and the hay that the Russian soldier used for cover did not save the occupier. It's worth giving credit to the Ukrainian pilots. They managed time and again to infiltrate even the most heavily fortified enemy positions and strike enemy equipment with precision. It's gotten to the point where our FPV drones are flying right into Russian shelters. When an FPV drone flies into a dugout or an ammo depot, the occupiers simply have no chance of survival. And the best proof of this is the latest statistics from the armed forces of Ukraine. In the past day alone, the aggressor country's army lost about 1,000 of its soldiers. In total, the occupiers' losses since the start of the full-scale war have exceeded 1,157,000 personnel. The Ukrainian armed forces have already destroyed 11,350 Kremlin tanks, more than 23,500 armored combat vehicles, nearly 35,000 artillery systems, and 1,541 multiple launch rocket systems.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
This happened for the first time. A K-2 ground kamikaze drone eliminated a group of Russians. An event that will be talked about for a long time has shown that the Ukrainian armed forces are capable of truly technological miracle strikes. And this is just the beginning. Fighters from the strike robot company stealthily directed their machine toward 3 occupiers, after which they activated the explosive device. As a result of the kamikaze robot's explosion, 1 enemy infantryman was killed and another was wounded. The third was eliminated by FPV drones. Ukrainian soldiers emphasized that previously the ground unmanned complex was used only for logistics and evacuation missions. The enemy has received a clear warning. Modern Ukraine not only defends itself but also attacks with precision and power that are changing the rules of the game. Right now, Ukraine is astonishing the world once again. Our actions are making the Kremlin nervously catch its breath. The enemy's plans for dominance are falling apart. The conveyor belt of Ukrainian might runs without pause. Drones tear through the sky, missiles hit their targets with precision, and artillery paints vast maps of fire. And this is only the beginning. Ukraine's defense industry will receive a standing ovation from the West. What other secret top-tier weapons are being showcased by the Ukrainian armed forces? Find out in just a moment. Self-propelled artillery, mortars, drones, electronic warfare, shells, ammunition, communication systems, air defense, missiles. Ukraine is actively ramping up the production of its own military equipment and ammunition. Production is becoming increasingly precise, large-scale, and technologically advanced.
During this war, Ukraine has already reached the point where almost 60% of the weapons we have, the weapons our soldiers use, are domestically produced. These are Ukrainian weapons. These are powerful weapons. This
is no longer just a simple local industry. Ukraine is building its own military technological shield, a network of production lines, testing grounds, and combat units that turn ideas into weaponry. And our specialists immediately test them in real-world conditions.
The Ukrainian side is scaling up military strikes with a range of over 1,000 kilometers.
Let's start with drones, the small but decisive technology that in an instant changed the rules of war. The series of strike platforms from the FP family and other Ukrainian models are not produced according to the principle of fast, cheap and effective. Their advantages are simplicity of design, speed of production and the relevance of their tactics. They make it possible to carry out precision strikes, disrupt enemy logistics and keep enemy positions under pressure far from the front line. In
2024, about 1 million units were contracted, and already in 2025, their production increased to 30,000 FPV drones per month. It should be noted that this quantity, that is the annual production of FPV drones, about 4 million, is a record figure, even taking into account the capabilities of the military-industrial complexes of all NATO countries combined. In other words, at this moment in time, the Ukrainian defense company Ukroboronprom is currently manufacturing a significant and unprecedented number of unmanned aerial vehicles. For comparison, the US Army adds about 100,000 unmanned aerial vehicles to its arsenal per year. Once again, I want to emphasize that the Ukrainian defense industry is producing up to 4 million drones.
The technological and production formula is simple. Composite fuselages, 3D printed wings, inexpensive components, and open-source navigation solutions. All of this makes it possible to produce operational platforms in batches. But you can't cut costs on electronics. Navigation and guidance systems make the drones resistant to Russian electronic warfare. Otherwise, mass waves of launches won't break through the enemy's dense defenses. In parallel with drones, a strategic direction is also being developed. Here, the key players are missiles and missile systems that strike the enemy's rear, depriving them of fuel depots and command centers. Neptune is a domestic anti-ship and coastal missile system. It has strengthened the security of maritime borders and given Kyiv tools to influence the enemy's logistics in the Black Sea.
The point is that Ukraine, as a country that essentially does not possess a military fleet, inflicted heavy losses on the Russian Federation by destroying up to 35% of the Black Sea Fleet's vessels. According to the British side, the naval activity of the Russian Federation in the Black Sea Basin has decreased as a result of the use of both strike drones and accordingly naval drones. Another
important milestone is the FPV-5 Flamingo cruise missile. This is a completely Ukrainian development with a declared range of up to
8,000 kilometers is a measurement of distance that equals about 621 miles. For example, traveling 1,000 kilometers could mean driving from one city to another that is far apart. Documented evidence of the Flamingo's use is the significant and well-documented strike on the oil terminal in Tuapse. Moreover, Russian public channels themselves confirmed that the Ukrainian side used these weapons.
By combining small drones and large cruise missiles, Ukraine gains both mass and strategy. Drones keep the enemy on edge, missiles strike critical targets, and together this seriously undermines the enemy's ability to wage a prolonged war. But Ukraine's defense industry is not just about small and large systems. It also includes time-tested developments like Bodana, Stugna, and other artillery and anti-tank systems, which provide mobility, firepower, resilience, and operate within a unified strike network. Intelligence,
drone reconnaissance, artillery adjustment, precision missile strike. And so it goes in a cycle. And adjustments are being made in reality by the Ukrainian side, specifically in the use of strike drones and storage. And we're talking about Flamingo and Neptune in the context of neutralizing the Russian Federation's oil refining complex. According to the Russian side's assessment, the costs and damages from Ukrainian strikes on the Russian Federation's oil refining complex are estimated at around $100 billion.
Ukraine's production capabilities are already extending beyond its borders. Under agreements and joint projects, Ukrainian companies are localizing assembly and serial production in European countries. If before the start of the full-scale war, Ukraine's defense industry lagged behind, by 2024 production volumes had reached about $9 billion, and in 2025 they grew to $35 billion. Plans for 2026 include scaling up to $60 billion. And this is just the beginning. How do you assess the successes of the armed forces of Ukraine on the front line? Share your opinion in the comments, hit the like button under the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There are already more than 480,000 of us subscribed. More to come. See you soon.